Oh, hi. Hi guys, Miss Smart here, coming to you from my backyard to talk a little bit about the working thesis, research proposal, and the bibliography. These are the assignments that you have due this week. Now, I've already started getting some emails about working thesis, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that than the proposal or the bibliography. All right, so first let's talk about what a working thesis actually is. And if you've read your textbook, pages 88 through 93, I believe, you should have a really good idea about what a working thesis is. And also, if you have spent enough time thinking about your research topic and developing a research question, which was one of the discussion postings, I believe, last week or week before, then this will lead you to a working thesis. So you probably already have more of a working thesis, at least in your mind, if not on paper. Then you realize that you have. Okay, but look, here's my textbook. Can you see this, guys? And if you're doing what you're supposed to do, then your textbook is also underlined and bolded and highlighted just like my textbook, okay? So I'm actually going to read from the textbook a little bit for you just in case. I don't know, some of you might not have the textbook, which I wouldn't think that would be possible. If you're in an English research class, you're going to have the textbook, right? But maybe you're not opening the textbook and reading it. I don't know, but just in case, I'm going to read it for you, okay? So on page 88 of your textbook, Writing and Reading Across the Curriculum, it says, in regard to writing a thesis is an assertion about your topic, and it provides structure for your paper. In other words, it guides your writing. It guides your research writing. It says that a thesis is a 1 or 2 sentence summary of your paper's content. Whether it is explanatory, mildly argumentative, or strongly argumentative, the thesis is an assertion about that content. For instance, what the content is, how it works, what it means, if it is valuable, if action should be taken, and so on. The thesis is the product of your thinking. It therefore represents your conclusion, not the conclusion of your paper, although the thesis does mirror the conclusion of your research paper, but what you've concluded, what conclusions you have made about the topic that you're researching. So you've come to some kind of conclusion about the thing that you're researching. So the thesis is the product of the conclusion that you have either come to or you are coming to. So if you've spent some time thinking about this conclusion, you should already pretty much be very close to a working thesis if you don't have one already. And the working thesis will govern your paper. All right, that's on page 88. Now let's look at page 89. I'm just going to read a little bit there for you. At the top of the page, it says, for a writer in the drafting stages, the thesis establishes a focus, a basis on which to include or exclude information. But for the reader of your finished product, the thesis will forecast your discussion. A thesis, therefore, is an essential tool for both writers and readers. You're giving us a guide of where you're going to be going when you give us a thesis. So this is needed for all academic papers. Okay, in the middle of page 89, it says that the thesis presents the controlling idea of your paper. The subject of a thesis and the assertion about it must present the right balance between the general and the specific to allow for a thorough discussion within the allotted length of the paper. The discussion might include definitions, details, comparisons, contrast, whatever is needed to illuminate a subject and support the assertion. Okay, keep in mind that your research paper, the final product, will be 8 to 10 pages. The synthesis essay, which is basically half of your research paper, is 4 to 5 pages. If your thesis is too broad, then you're going to have a much longer paper than that. So you need to work to some specificity specificity. Sorry, I have a new Invisalign retainer in, so I kind of have a little bit of a lisp. So you're going to work to some specificity on your thesis so that your paper is not too long, okay? You need to bear in mind when writing your thesis that the more general your subject, the more complex your assertion, the longer your discussion will need to be to cover that subject. So you want to kind of narrow down your thesis. At the end of page 89, it says, so to write an effective thesis and therefore a controlled, effective paper, you need to limit your subject and your claims about it. The narrowing process should help you arrive at a manageable topic for your paper. You will convert the topic into a thesis when you make an assertion about it. In other words, a claim that you will explain and support in your paper. Then your textbook goes on to talk about making an assertion, and it says thesis statements make an assertion or claim about your paper's topic. And if you have spent enough time reading and gathering information and brainstorming about your topic and your ideas about the assignment, then you'll be knowledgeable enough to have something to say based on a combination of your own thinking and the thinking of your sources. Right underneath, at page 90 now, right underneath that very first paragraph, it says, if you have trouble coming up with an assertion, devote more time to invention strategies. And then it talks about what those invention strategies are. Try writing your subject at the top of a page and then listing everything you now know and feel about it. Often from such a list, you'll venture an assertion you can then use to fashion a working thesis. One good way to gauge the reasonableness of your claim is to see what other authors have asserted about the same topic. Keeping good notes on the views of others will provide you with a useful counterpoint to your own views as you write and think about your claim, and you may want to use those notes in your paper. Then it says that you can make several assertions about your topic to try to narrow down your working thesis. Keep in mind that your working thesis is a hypothesis to be tested. It's a working thesis because you haven't written this research paper yet and you haven't tested that hypothesis. It's an excellent tool, though, the working thesis, for planning broad sections of your paper, but again, don't let that prevent you from pursuing related discussions as they occur to you. So guys, while you've developed a research question and then you've turned that into a statement, this becomes your working thesis. It will guide your writing, but the working thesis may not be your final thesis at the end of your paper. Allow yourself, you're not married to a working thesis. Allow yourself to write about your topic freely, because then you can go back and revise your working thesis into your final thesis, because the whole point is to explore your topic. And you may have a hypothesis in your head, but once you test it and begin writing about it, you may end up somewhere unexpected to you and need to revise your working thesis just a little bit to become your final thesis according to what you discovered about your topic. Does that make sense? Okay, so starting with the working thesis, it says that I've already told you this is a hypothesis of sorts, but you have a hunch about something. You have a hunch about your topic, and this is the claim that you are intending to make about that topic. Okay, over on page 91, it says that the working thesis is meant to help you sketch the structure of your paper, because an effective structure flows directly from your thesis, which your working thesis will be provisional. Then you will notice, very important, you need to try to figure out where you're going with your paper and where you're going with your working thesis. So you'll see under the heading, how ambitious should your thesis be, on page 91 to the top of page 92. That's very important section of your textbook, because it defines the explanatory thesis, the mildly argumentative thesis, and the strongly argumentative thesis, which those are the hardest working thesis, because when you're strongly arguing about something in your thesis, then you've got a lot of writing to do that. So I need you to read about the 3 different types of theses, which are explanatory, mildly argumentative, and strongly argumentative, and try to figure out where you're going with yours. Okay. Now, I've just posted some resources on pause for you under the module final research paper. You will see a submodule there for working thesis, which has a couple of how-to videos, and one of them is from Purdue OWL, which is the be-all and end-all for writing research papers or any kind of writing. So you'll see underneath the working thesis submodule and final research paper, there are 2 videos there, and the other one starts out really elementary because it talks about how to actually build a paper, and that's stuff that you learned in junior high school. But then it has a really good step-by-step, brings the most difficult ideas down to very basic way to write a thesis. So if you'll be patient with the other video, the one that accompanies Purdue, give that lady a chance, because she starts out explaining how to structure a paper, but then in the middle of that video is this very good, very simple, very basic. Step 1, you do this. Step 2, you do this. And it really breaks down how to write a working thesis. Okay, so give her a chance too. Those 2 videos are under working thesis submodule in the final research paper module. Okay, but I have also hyperlinked those underneath the week 10 module, so you can go directly to them when you click on week 10's module. Okay, now let's go ahead and get the bibliography out of the way. Guys, all the bibliography is your works cited page. Okay, so the sources that you're going to use, which several of them should be from the databases because they'll need to be scholarly articles. The sources that you're using that go on your works cited page, that is your bibliography. In other words, bibliography is just another word for this is my works cited page. Okay, so I've recently emailed you a template, but I've also posted the template on pause for how you're to put together your working thesis and your research proposal and your bibliography, and it'll go just like this in one document. At the top of your page, after your heading, you know, your name, my name, our class, the date, then you have centered working thesis. Underneath that is your working thesis. Skip a couple lines and then you have research proposal. Underneath that, you write your research proposal. Next page, on a page by itself, is your bibliography, otherwise known as your works cited page, and that goes on a separate page from your working thesis and your research proposal. Okay? Now let's talk about the research proposal, because it's a 250-word summary of what you plan on doing in your research paper. Okay, so let's think of the word proposal. Basically, what you're doing with your research proposal is you are proposing to me your idea of your research paper. In other words, you're saying to me, okay, Miss Mart, here's my topic. This is what I plan to write about. This is what I plan to argue, to persuade my audience to do. This is the call of action I plan on persuading my audience to take. Whatever it is that you're planning to do, you're proposing, you're explaining to me what you're going to do in your research paper. So you're proposing, this is my topic, here's my working thesis. So your research proposal actually might start, the very first line of your research proposal is oftentimes your working thesis. So you'll have your working thesis there. This is what I'm going to talk about, Miss Smart. This is how I'm going to talk about it. You're going to use this source to talk about this. You're going to use this source to talk about this. You're considering interviewing people to ask these sorts of questions. So you're basically explaining to me how you're going to construct your research paper. So you're going to have your purpose in your research proposal, which is what you plan to examine and why is it important. Why is it important? Guys, remember, you're married to this paper for a month, for I guess it's 3.5 weeks now. Oh my gosh, time is going so fast. But you need to be writing about something that you're interested in. You need to be writing about something that that you're really jazzed up about. Otherwise, it's going to be a long 3.5 weeks to write this paper. Write about a topic that interests you. So why is it important to you? That's going to come out in your research proposal. And then you are going to give me your role. What is your role in this research? What is your role in this research writing? Are you writing to inform? Are you writing to inform and persuade? Are you writing to advocate for something? Are you wanting to advocate for change? Is there some course of action that you're hoping to ask your audience to take? So you're going to have your purpose and your topic. This is what I'm writing about. This is why it's important. And then your role, what you plan to do. You're also going to have a minimum of 4 sources on your bibliography, and at least 2 of them, I think I said 2, or did I say 3? Check the rubric and guidelines, because I think it's at least 2 of these have to be scholarly articles, need to be from the databases. Speaking of databases, I hyperlinked library instruction under the week 10 module. We are in week 10 now, so that you will go to the library and get some instruction online about how to use the databases, how to find reliable sources, what makes a reliable source. Now, you'll remember some time back I posted videos about how to find credible sources, but your very own library can give you some instruction on that, and I expect you to go through library instructions so that you know how to navigate the databases and find credible sources for your research paper. Okay, so I expect you to click on that library instruction link and enroll and get you some library instruction to understand how to work the databases and find those good sources. Okay, so this is pretty much all I have to say about the 3 assignments that are coming up, the working thesis, research proposal, and the bibliography. Don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. You guys just stay in it, stay strong, stay well, and I miss you guys. Talk later.